Hello, my name's Craig Callum, but you're probably more interested to hear about this thing behind me, Old Red Riding Hood. This is my video for the REVS Restored Virtual Car Show weekend. Old Red Riding Hood is a Ford Model A from 1930, but it's been modified in a traditional hot rod style, which means that it's tuned up for racing, but none of the parts really are beyond 1948. So it's pretty slow still, and not the most safe. But that doesn't really matter. The racing I tend to do is on the sand and dirt, where no one's really got any grip anyway. The carburetor is from a Ford V8. The engine has been tuned up with larger valves, higher compression, and a very lumpy race cam. There's not much of an exhaust to speak of, so she can be a bit loud at times. The brakes are still push rod operated, although slightly larger Ford Model B on the front. It can be fairly interesting for stopping. And then it's running 16-inch V8 spoked wheels with much more chunky rubber. So I've got traditional Firestone tread all the way around, which looks the part but doesn't necessarily do a great job of providing that much grip. I think once people have got over the extreme noise of Old Red, then the next thing you probably notice is the paintwork. This has taken many years. In fact, the original paint is still there somewhere, which is nigh on 90 years old now. But it's been repainted a few times in its life, and that's slowly peeling off and scratching off and wearing out in different places. The race number on the side obviously gives away a little bit as to its purpose. It's not to everyone's taste. People often ask me when I'm going to repaint it or restore the car, but actually this is the perfect restoration for me. I prefer the car to show its signs of use, its age, its wear. Honestly, one of the standout features of Old Red is probably the stripy hood, which seems to get a lot of attention, but actually was kind of an afterthought. We were preparing the car for, I think, the second or third year of racing at Romo Motor Festival in Denmark, and I just wanted a way to differentiate the car from previous year's photographs so that I would know which year they were from. Against all advice, I put the stripes in the wrong direction across the hood. For me, they seemed quite traditional or vintage in style that way. I think perhaps it reminded me of the invasion stripes from the World War II planes. It has that kind of feeling about it, so it feels quite purposeful. It feels very correct for the car. The name Old Red Riding Hood actually comes from my love of Tex Avery. A cartoonist and illustrator created Tom and Jerry amongst many other characters. One of those Tex Avery characters who I've always found amusing was the wolf, whose escapades in chasing Little Red Riding Hood, or Hot Red Riding Hood, or whichever Red Riding Hood that they'd happen to be in that variation of the same story, really kind of amused me. So I thought, well, why not Old Red Riding Hood? Perhaps she's let herself go a bit and there's a few signs of wear and tear, so it kind of fitted the car. It also fits in with a traditional hot rod phrase that if you're not part of a car club, then you're a lone wolf, and I've never really been into car clubs and that sort of thing. So for me, I was referred to as the lone wolf when we were racing, and I thought that that's perfect. It's a good play on that with the wolf and Old Red Riding Hood. I bought Old Red in May 2014. I actually already had another car that I was building to turn into a hot rod. I had a four-door Ford that I was going to build. When a friend of mine sent me a message, a very good friend who's also into similar style of cars, sent me a message saying that 4H has come up for sale. We knew it was 4H because it had previously been thrown together to attend an event and had 4H painted on the door. And we'd both obsessed over this car. There was something about the paintwork, there was something about the style and stance of it that we just loved. It's nothing like what you see now. Old Red has definitely moved on a long way from there. I've spent a long time rebuilding pretty much every component of the car, but there was just something in the bones of that car that we loved. And so 2014, having just spent all of my money on another car to build a hot rod, I had to go and get it as soon as it came up for sale. quite a significant time for me. 2014 was also when I was diagnosed as depressed, clinically depressed, and started my journey of therapy and restoration of myself. So actually, Old Red and I, we kind of took that journey together, for better or worse. At times, Old Red has been the thing to save me, but probably also that's thrown me into the depths of despair sometimes too. Restoring and working on old cars can be fun, but it also comes with some really not fun times too. People are often surprised actually. I'm not hugely into repairing or working on cars. It doesn't bring me the same kind of joy that I see some other people seem to get from that. I don't know what it is, it's just something that's never really been my thing. And of course everyone assumes that it is. As a car guy, you must love getting dirt under your fingernails and repairing things and all that sort of stuff. And I mean, I enjoy the finished product. There's definitely some kind of reward when you've created something or you've pulled something apart and got it working again and get it back on the road. But for me, it's a means to an end. The vehicles I love unfortunately require that knowledge and require that level of maintenance and servicing. So I have to work on them, but I certainly am not a huge fan of it. Sometimes there's no reason why something breaks, and I think that's a lot to be said, you know, with my own mental struggles too, is that, you know, there's not often a reason, and so you just kind of have to accept it and move through it. And perhaps that's why I struggle so much with working on the cars, because it does remind me a little bit too much of my own brain and the way I work. Slowly and bit by bit, take your time. And the car improves over time. I mean, the problem is that things break as quickly as you repair them, so yeah, you often have to perhaps put some things to the side and focus on the more pressing issue at hand. I think for me, it's more the community side of things, and which sounds strange to say, as I've just said, I'm not part of any car club, but it's the friends that I've made, the community around the cars I own. I think it's safe to say you're only really a good friend of mine if you've pushed my car whilst I struggle to get it started. It allows you to share those joys and pains of owning something weird and wonderful like Old Red or like any vehicle really. You share those passions together, and it gives you a bond that is sort of, you know, is a lasting bond, because, well, they constantly break, so there's always something else to talk about. I still get so surprised by this wonderful community of weirdos in the car world that I've thankfully found myself part of. I often receive beautiful artwork that people have gone out their way to spend time creating of this silly little car. I mean, I don't think Old Red and I have ever won a race, but it's just not about that. It's about being part of it. It's about just being out there and enjoying it, rather than actually bringing home trophies or competing in any way. I mean, we just kind of go out there and have a good laugh. That's not to say I don't get a little bit competitive on the start line. I certainly try my hardest, but I often have to just accept the fact that maybe next year's the year for me and Old Red. Thank you all so much for listening, and especially thank you to Adam for pulling this all together. I mean, such a wonderful, wonderful event from such a wonderful, wonderful man. Thank you. Goodbye.